Survival games have become something of a cultural obsession over the past decade, which I actually alluded to back in my Miasma Caves video. The long and short of it was that Minecraft came along in 2009 and broke open the floodgates. Then every sucker with a decent rig and an itching for some of those indie gaming dollars decided that they should try and get in on the action. What started out as a cash grab for many basically became a cultural phenomenon. While it may have been about copying Minecraft's success at first, it is clear that the longevity of the genre can only really be attributed to the genre striking a chord in our collective psyche. So what is it about survival games that makes them so popular with so many people? My name is Will with Clickist, and today we're talking about why we enjoy survival games so damn much. And this time it's not just me rambling, I actually have sources and everything. Oftentimes, we think of games as being empowering. For the most part, we can do things in video games that we could never do in real life, with the possible exception of simulation games like Euro Truck Simulator or Farm Simulator, where you're just repeating a mundane activity. There have been studies done in the past, like this one from the University of Utah, which has shown that patients with certain illnesses, such as cancer, autism, Parkinson's and asthma, can be greatly empowered by video games. There have also been numerous talks by people about how games can empower us and help us to succeed, such as this TEDx talk by Jonathan Harrison, or this pretty popular video by Extra Credit about how games give kids a sense of agency. Not to mention the numerous videos dissecting power fantasies in games, and why they're good, or bad, or don't exist at all.
Power fantasy.
Power fantasy.
Power fantasy.
Power fantasy.
Even if these videos and studies weren't out there, it would be easy for most people who actually play games to tell how empowering they can be. Most of us who are involved in gaming have had a day where everything made us feel shitty, or we just didn't seem to be able to do anything right. But booting up a game made us feel better. The truth is plain to see, at least from an anecdotal perspective, that video games make us feel powerful, because a good game gives the player a sense of control over their life and destiny that real life often fails to provide. While it is generally accepted by many that games usually seek to empower the player, it isn't always the case. Some games actively go out of their way to do the opposite and disempower the player. The survival genre tends to fall into this fold. Rather than leading the player towards an inevitable win scenario, survival games can just present a challenge that players have to constantly work at, not necessarily to win, but to keep playing. While Minecraft is often called the first true survival game, survival elements have been present since the 80s and 90s, starting with games like the Oregon Trail. There was a bit of a lull in games with survival elements for a while, but they eventually found their way back into pop culture with the survival horror genre. Regardless of whether you're talking about these older titles or the slew of indie games which followed in the blocky wake of Minecraft, they all share the same basic elements. Resources are finite, and in some cases very hard to come by. The player is usually an underdog in a large and dangerous world where there is a constant threat of failure and death. An element which became more prominent after indies took over the survival genre were the loss of inventory on death, or just straight permadeath in some cases. It's pretty easy to see that one of the key elements of a survival game is the disempowerment of the player. Unlike most games where you can do impossible things with relative ease, in survival games you have to scrape by living on the edge of death to simply survive day-to-day life in a harsh, fictitious world. So why on earth do we enjoy that? If most people play games to escape their dull lives or to make themselves feel more powerful, why have we become so obsessed with worlds which seek to make us feel like the weak and lonely nothings that we actually are? According to the paper, Survival-Themed Video Games and Cultural Constructs of Power, the reason we enjoy survival games might just be because they hold a looking glass up to the real-world fears that have become more and more present in our daily lives. When talking about the emergent gameplay in survival games, which often both engages and restricts the player at the same time, the paper said, "We contend that this dynamic spans beyond game rules and interface, and is a fundamental component of the survival game design, and beyond this, a looking glass that reflects cultural fears about scarcity and inevitable downturn." It hardly needs saying that the world seems scarier than it ever has been before. Whether that's because we're more connected than ever, so we hear about all the scary crap that would have been unknown to us before, or whether it's actually just getting worse. It seems like classic games with such powerful characters don't always resonate well with people who live in a world where everything seems to be against them. In a world that for many seems designed to make them fail, it's no wonder players turn to games where just surviving is an achievement in and of itself. This paper even goes so far as to suggest that it's that constant feeling of inevitable failure which makes players keep coming back to these games over and over again. We contend that it is precisely the uncertainty of success and precarious nature of the environments and situations in survival games that motivates players to connect with them. If anything could possibly prove that they're right in this contention, it is Unreal World, an independent survival game which was originally released as shareware back in 1992, and is still being updated and sold to this very day. Unreal World is the very definition of a game in which death is inevitable. You're basically plonked right down into Iron Age Finland, with one of several backstories, and have to survive, usually something which you'll find impossible to do. Despite the constant threat of death, people have been coming back to this game for nearly 30 years, and it doesn't seem like this dedicated fanbase is going to stop anytime soon. It is clear that something beyond the way these games play has struck a chord with modern gamers. I mean, what other explanation could there be for how insanely popular these games have become? Sure, there have been plenty of clones out there who just wanted to chase the success of Minecraft. Hell, just look at some of these. But there are just as many games out there that saw what Minecraft was doing and used it as a springboard for their own ideas, and found a huge amount of popularity all of their own. Obviously, a lot of the information contained in this very specific paper is purely speculative, mainly based on observations and interpretations, but these conclusions are only the beginning. The truth is that this paper is a springboard for further research into why this boom seems to be lasting such a long time, and much more than that, why it doesn't seem to have the same popularity curve that most trends seem to have. The point of this paper is to suggest that changes in genre are not merely aesthetic, which change as technology improves, but instead are evolutions of concept, which reflect the very society in which many gamers and developers find themselves. I think that it really says something about the state of the world, or at least about our perception of it. I'd like to end my video today with a quote from the end of the paper, which I used for a lot of my research. Whether it is being stranded at sea, trudging through a war-torn country, battling zombies, or avoiding radiation poisoning, it is not the setting that matters to the gamers as much as the struggle for survival. The realness of resource management, crafting, and the threat of death, whether by exposure, starvation, or attack, makes games that were once considered fantasy now seem grounded in a digital reality. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of this more heavily researched style of video, because if they're popular, I might make them more frequently. If you're interested in checking out any of the papers or resources that I mentioned in the video, I've linked all of them that I can in the description down below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to check out my channel as well.